I remember the first time I saw the old, decrepit theater at the edge of town. It was a shadow of its former glory, with ivy creeping up its cracked walls and broken windows that looked like hollow eyes. This place had been abandoned for decades, whispered about in hushed tones and avoided by most. But for me, it held a magnetic pull. Our theater group was desperate for a venue. The local stages were booked, and the idea of performing in such a place, steeped in history and mystery, was too enticing to pass up. We decided to bring the old theater back to life with our performance. Little did we know, it had never truly been dead. The moment we stepped inside, a chill ran down my spine. The air was thick with dust, and the remnants of the past lay scattered around tattered costumes, old playbills, and broken props. As we began cleaning and setting up, strange things started happening. Shadows moved in the corners of my vision. Whispers echoed through the empty halls, and an unsettling feeling settled over us. We brushed it off as nerves. After all, it was an old building, bound to creak and groan. But as the days passed, the occurrences became harder to ignore. Props would move on their own, and cold spots would appear out of nowhere. One night, while rehearsing late, I saw her for the first time, a ghostly figure in a white dress, gliding across the stage. She vanished as quickly as she appeared, leaving me questioning my sanity. I wasn't the only one experiencing these hauntings. The others reported seeing apparitions of actors in old-fashioned costumes, hearing phantom footsteps, and feeling an oppressive presence during rehearsals. We tried to rationalize it, attributing it to our collective imagination, but deep down, we knew there was something more sinister at play. As opening night approached, the activity intensified. One of our lead actors, Mark, was found unconscious on stage, with no memory of what happened. He claimed he felt a cold hand gripping his throat. Despite our growing fear, we were determined to go on with the show. We had invested too much time and effort to back out now. The night of the performance was electric with anticipation and dread. The theater was packed, the audience oblivious to the unseen spectators among them. As the curtains rose, I felt a cold breeze sweep through the auditorium. Our play unfolded smoothly at first, but midway through, the temperature dropped dramatically, and the lights flickered. The ghosts made their presence known. The audience gasped as the apparitions appeared on stage, seamlessly integrating into our performance. Their expressions were sorrowful, their eyes pleading for help. One by one, the actors began to falter, overcome by the overwhelming presence of the spirits. In the final act, I found myself alone on stage, the other actors having fled in terror. The ghostly actors surrounded me, their faces twisted in agony. I realized they were trapped, their souls bound to the theater by unfinished business and untold stories. Summoning all my courage, I vowed to tell their tales, to give them the closure they desperately needed. As I spoke, the atmosphere shifted. The ghosts began to fade, their expressions softening as they found peace. The audience, unaware of the true nature of the night's events, applauded, believing it to be the most convincing performance they had ever seen. The curtains fell, and with them, the haunting presence lifted. We never returned to that theater. It remained abandoned, a relic of a bygone era and a repository of restless spirits. I carry the memory of that night with me, a reminder of the thin veil between our world and the next. The theater had come to life, but it was the living who had been forever changed. Leaving the theater that night, the weight of what we had experienced settled heavily on my shoulders. The others in the group decided to part ways, unable to shake the terror that had gripped them. As for me, I felt a strange sense of duty to those lost souls. Over the next few weeks, I spent my time researching the history of the old theater, determined to uncover the stories of the spirits who haunted it. I visited the local library, combed through newspaper archives, and spoke with elderly residents who remembered the theater in its heyday. I learned that the theater had been a vibrant cultural hub in the early 20th century, home to many successful productions, but tragedy struck during a performance in the 1930s when a fire broke out, claiming the lives of several actors and audience members. The theater never recovered from the disaster, and it closed its doors soon after, left to decay and be forgotten. The more I learned, the clearer it became that the spirits trapped in the theater were those who had perished in the fire. They had been bound to the place, their stories untold and their souls restless. Armed with this knowledge, I knew I had to return one last time. I gathered my courage and revisited the theater, now a place of quiet desolation. As I stepped inside, the familiar chill enveloped me, and that oppressive atmosphere pressed down. I walked to the center of the stage and began to speak. recounting the stories of the actors who had died in the fire, their lives, their dreams, and the tragedy that had befallen them. As I spoke, I felt a shift in the air. The temperature rose slightly, and the shadows seemed to retreat. I continued, pouring my heart into the words, determined to give these lost souls the recognition and closure they deserved. When I finished, a profound silence filled the theater. I stood there, waiting, hoping that my efforts had made a difference. Slowly, the ghostly figures began to appear, their faces no longer twisted in agony but serene and grateful. One by one, they approached me, their forms shimmering in the dim light. They nodded in silent appreciation before fading away, their spirits finally at peace. With the theater now truly empty, I felt a sense of fulfillment. I knew that the haunting was over, and the souls of those who had died so tragically had found rest. I left the theater for the last time, the burden lifted from my shoulders. The experience changed me profoundly. I dedicated my life to telling stories, not just on stage but through writing, ensuring that the tales of the forgotten and the lost were brought to light. The old theater remained abandoned, a monument to the past and a testament to the enduring power of storytelling. And so, my story comes to an end, a journey through fear and redemption, where the living and the dead found closure. The theater stands as a silent witness to the power of memory and the peace that comes with being remembered.